Thank you, Ilshat. So the next speaker on our panel today is Zubaida Shamsuddin, and she is the Uyghur Human Rights Project's Chinese Outreach Coordinator. She has been campaigning for the human rights and political freedom of the Uyghur people since the 1980s. Before joining UHRP, Ms. Shamsuddin worked for the International Uyghur Human Rights and Democracy Foundation. Ms. Shamsuddin has translated professionally between Chinese, Uyghur, English and Russian for non-profit and government work in the United States and Australia for over 2 decades. She also has experience with multicultural education and community liaison work. Zubaida has a certification in Chinese from the Industrial University of Xinjiang, a bachelor's degree in information science from East China Normal University, Shanghai, a diploma in Russian language and literature from the State University of Western Kazakhstan, and a master's degree in international studies from the University of South Australia, for which she focused on the modern history of Uyghur human rights. She's fluent in English, Uyghur, Chinese, Uzbek, and Russian. But you can speak to us in English, please.
Well, thank you very much, Henry,
and Uyghur.
for a very nice introduction. In fact, yes, am I right? I mean, that can tell that the Uyghur people are not very discriminatory in learning languages. I mean, in fact, Uyghur people, they really enjoyed learning language because they historically saw the learning language as one of the knowledge. In here, definitely really agree with what Ilshat Hassan said, and the Nigar's experience is just amazing, and it really touches people's heart, and what bilingual education policy is doing to Uyghur people. And as a honored person on Uyghur in here, first of all, again, I wish to congratulate our first International Uyghur Language Day. Hammalarning ana til günü mübarek olsun. Hem özümüzden hem hemimizden. As an honor, I used our Uyghur language, mother tongue first, which is, again, I'm proud to be Uyghur, and I'm proud to use my own language still and forever. In fact, in here, most of the things as a teacher, Ilshat Hassan already pointed out, and as a student, experienced student within the bilingual education system, and Nigara pointed out many interesting and also very sad side of the story. And as a Uyghur student, in fact, started in Uyghur language school in my childhood, and then started the university in Chinese language, and like the further education in Russian as well as in English. So I can tell that in here, the problem, the issue is not learning language, or not the Uyghur people is not like to learn language, or not interested in learning other languages. In fact, Uyghur people, they treasure learning languages. And the problem in here is because Chinese government, they initiated implementing bilingual education policy, which is so-called bilingual education, to Uyghur people. In fact, what the government is trying to do is eliminate Uyghur language from both educational institutions of the Uyghur society, as well as completely from Uyghur life. That actually very great situation for Uyghur people, and it's a great concern. And in fact, probably many people heard and read the news recently that that bilingual education, what it's doing to Uyghurs is not only just to taking out or taking away Uyghur language from Uyghur people. It's in fact taking away Uyghur identity, Uyghur history, Uyghur culture, Uyghur pride from Uyghur people. And this is not just only happening in educational system. In fact, this is happening a whole Uyghur society in Uyghur land, Uyghur region right now. And recently, the Radio Free Asia reported that the Chinese government now brought a high-speed train to Xinjiang, now East Turkestan. And what they did first thing is the writing signs, showing signs within the train area, especially in Urumqi. And you can see that all the signs are only written in Chinese and English. And as a Uyghur region, Uyghur autonomous region. Where is Uyghur language gone from this? From this high-tech developing infrastructure, which is the train, the high-speed train, is running around in our region, in our country. But where is our language gone? Why the Uyghur language hasn't been used there? That's one issue that I can tell. Another thing is, again, everybody know that the Chinese government's autonomous regional policy is saying that the Uyghur language is the mother language of the native Uyghur people in East Turkestan. They have rights to use Uyghur language, but in fact it's not happening. It's not only happening in educational system, it's not happening in the whole Uyghur society, the Uyghur land. Like, for example, if you go to Ili, Volja, and they're saying that this is because of the Kazakh district, Kazakh, the separate district. Wherever you see the sign is Kazakh and the Chinese language. And then if you go to Urumqi and it's all Chinese and the English language, you further travel to south. Again, you see Chinese, very few Uyghur language. In fact, what's happening right now, not only just in education system, they're just squeezing out the language in the whole society, like make feel the current Uyghurs that this place is not yours. You kind of people that came from somewhere else to see something else. But that's how the Chinese government tried to make feel the indigenous Uyghurs the kind of minority or outsiders of their own land. Another concern that what Chinese government is doing is the teaching Uyghur language not from the beginning, but if it's truly kind of bilingual education, they should be using the both language at the same time. Like what's happening in Europe, the bilingual education system is when they learn languages, like in Germany, they learn both German and English together. When they complete the high school, the students can speak in both languages, in German as well as in English. That's the bilingual education system. That's what, at the beginning, the Uyghurs were very excited. Wow, we're going to have bilingual education system, so all Uyghur students will be fluent in both Chinese and English. That, in fact, made a lot of Uyghur people, especially the Uyghur intellectuals, very happy, because that's what the Uyghurs felt, because Uyghurs always loved, valued the techniques, valued the development, valued the education. As I said before, the Uyghur language, the same as Chinese language, if it can develop in the same level, that would be great. So that would be fantastic. Everybody would be happy, but it didn't happen. And especially how this happened, especially as Nigara said, that from the beginning, the say is this is bilingual education class, but it wasn't bilingual. The people only, everything was in Chinese. Only the Uyghur language taught was few hours, 2 hours a week, like that, just like foreign language. For the Uyghur students, you only teach 2 hours a week of Uyghur language, but the rest of the old instruction in Chinese. How would you say it's a bilingual education? Like as a translator, I have translated many Uyghur students, young Uyghurs who came from East Turkestan to America recently. And I can feel that the system, what system created right now is the Uyghur students who's not really completely fluent in Chinese, as well as not very fluent, definitely not fluent at all in Uyghur. When you speak to them in Chinese, they mix with Uyghurs, and when you speak to them in Uyghur, they mix with Chinese. They create some kind of people, the students, that not very kind of capable in everything. Imagine with that base, how are you gonna get knowledge or anything in the great level or in deep level? As a language learner from my very young ages, when I am very little, I used to speak little Russian because of my parents' influence. And then later I learned Chinese. I didn't feel any contradiction between learning languages but what I feel is the most important is you have to be fluent in one language at first and from the beginning. Like if you fluent in your own mother tongue and you will be able to fluent in the second language. I'm not kind of language researcher or expert, but that tells from my experience. But what's happening in East Turkestan and what's the bilingual education policy doing to Uyghurs is absolute disgrace and absolute it's failure. Because the so-called bilingual education is not only just eliminating Uyghur language from Uyghurs, it's completely destroying Uyghur education system, Uyghur history, Uyghur identity, and the Uyghurs, who they are as a people. Which is, it's not useful for the Uyghur people and the Uyghurs' future, and it's not really useful for whole China even. Because in China you say you are one of the minority nationality, which is you have almost the population of 20 million Uyghurs. But the Uyghur language, again, it's one of the treasure language, because the Uyghurs have great history, great treasure, great achievement, and they are capable of doing it forever. But if you destroy one language and install another, I don't think it's going to be kind of great achievement, and especially in terms of education, it's not a great thing. And another thing what is happening is I just don't understand why the so-called bilingual education just has to implement towards the Uyghurs. I just don't understand, because even as China is designated, the Xinjiang or East Turkestan, we call it, is autonomous region of Uyghurs. And if you wish to keep peace, and if you wish to keep stability for whole China, why it's necessary that you implement bilingual, saying bilingual education, but enforcing all Uyghurs to use Uyghur language? In fact, making, implementing monolingual education. Why is that? What's the benefit of doing that? And to me, I don't see any benefit. Like, as myself, as studied in Chinese university, but complete high school in Uyghur language. And I didn't feel it's not very useful. Like, after high school completion, we did 2 years intensive Chinese course, Chinese education. And after that, we enrolled into Chinese university. And although it is very difficult, because Chinese language as one of the foreign language to us as well, it's not easy for us to completely, deeply understand and learn Chinese language. But the benefit of learning intensive Chinese course for years, and then for 2 years, and after that, mixing with Chinese students, studying the profession with Chinese students together, the benefit of that one, although we felt extreme pressure, definitely we came from the unequal education system, because our school environment was completely different, definitely far behind in Chinese schools. The education, the resources were very low level. Definitely it's incomparable with Chinese education resources. And then the testing system was, again, it's not fair. They had the Tongka, which is altogether kind of a test, but what we come from the education system is far behind the Chinese system. But despite all of these inequalities, but still we were able to successfully complete the university, no less than any other Chinese students, any other successful Chinese students. So it was kind of doing good to East Turkestan, the benefit of East Turkestan, because when you complete the university and come back to East Turkestan, what we were able to do is we were able to work completely and fully, deeply with Chinese schools, at the same time with the Uyghurs, because we are fluent in our own native Uyghur, as well as we deeply able to understand the Chinese language, which was great. And suddenly, I agree with Ilshad Hassan's comment, saying that this bilingual education system is carefully, systematically engineered system to attack on Uyghur identity. I agree with that, because that's how they did. Because we were also kind of experiment the students, try to see what happens, let them finish the school in native language, and let them do the Chinese course, see what happens with the Chinese students, how they go. And the second run was, what they did is Xinjiang Ban, which is took young Uyghurs to China and make a Xinjiang Ban in China and teach them Chinese everything. And then the third run is completely implementing the bilingual education, that policy. With that, Another way that this is careful engineering because it comes from the top, they're saying that from top to down. And you heard probably from what Jiang Chunshan said, at the same time they're implementing all the policy and doing all the damages to the Uyghurs. And from the policy level, what Jiang Chunshan said at the time is the Uyghur language is out of step with the 21st century, saying that the Uyghur language is backward. Again, my question in here, why would you say that if you're judging about the Uyghur language's backwardness? Is the autonomous region leaders ever learned Chinese language? I mean, Uyghur language. Do they know any Uyghur language? Did Jiang Chunshan ever learn Uyghur language? And why not if you didn't learn? Why not? Since you're regional leader for the people, the indigenous people, the Uyghur population lives in that region, why wouldn't you learn Uyghur language? But since you didn't learn, how could you judge that the Uyghur language is a backward language? What I'm saying is, it's kind of one way is brainwash of all the Uyghurs, another way is it's absolute attack on Uyghur identity and the Uyghur culture. Because with the language together, what Chinese government trying to do, completely eradicate Uyghur culture, Uyghurness from the Uyghurs' heart. That's the biggest damage that the bilingual education is doing to Uyghur people. That's why what I would conclude is the essence of bilingual education. In fact, it's kind of just speed up attack on the Uyghur identity. Thank you.